And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Hit that like button for me, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate you coming back. Share this out. Again, we're trying to get to 2,200 subscribers. We're already over the 2.1 mark. Have a lot in store for you guys today as we will be talking about the Cowboys Giants game, which, by the way, we will be streaming tomorrow night. Here, myself, Luca, and Dylan will be covering the game. So if you need to, if you don't want to listen to Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit or whatever broadcast you listen to, well, you tune into us and we'll give you the Giants side of things, but we'll also be fair to the Cowboys because we're transparent people, we're transparent fans, we're transparent content creators. But this episode will be on the podcast platforms after the game, after this show. I can't say after the game. Why would it be after the game? Little brain fuck a little bit right there. But in the second half of our show, we do have David Howman of Blogging the Boys coming on. I was trying to get Tom Ryle on, but David answered quicker. He'll be joining us in the second half of the show. I have a couple of questions about the Cowboys. I'm pretty sure you guys too. But I did see some comments in the chat. It's not showing up here on Restream, but I got to read them legitimately. Okay, so YouTube's being a little. Let me just unpin this message right here. Okay, Ryan Lynch commented earlier in the chat. He said, "I live in the DFW area, by way of Edison, New Jersey. Mom's from Jamaica, Queens. Lord knows, in my mind, if we go 2-whatever, if those two dubs are against Dallas, this season was a success." This guy really hates Dallas. It's relief when our G-men win. For me, it's pure joy watching the Cowgirls lose. I believe for the first time in a long time, we have a chance to feel both those emotions. Let's go, Big Blue. Well, I love to see that. I love to see that from a fan. You know, a little bit of a hype, because if we were coming in here and we were 0-3 instead of 1-2, I think it would be a very, very dire situation. I think it'd be an interesting situation, not in a good way. By the way, shout outs to um, in the chat. He said our cornerbacks are out. But let me get into my first thoughts about this game as people continue to pile in to our stream. My first thoughts on this game, right? Obviously, the Giants were a desperate team coming into last Sunday, game that I was at, and they won, right? A lot of people had them not winning the game, blowout, this, that, the third, whatever it was, right? I didn't have the Giants winning. The Giants won the football game, okay? So the way I'll feel about this game is I'll be sort of kind of happy if they compete. I'll be hella happy if they win, because it's like, okay, we're kind of pinning ourselves in a good direction here because you beat Dallas. And trust me, guys, Dallas isn't as bad as you think they are. I know that's, kind of defending the other team and whatnot, but I don't think Dallas is as bad as everybody says. They usually start out really rough, they get hot, and then they go in the playoffs and are eliminated in the first, second round. So as far as that goes, Dallas isn't as bad. And if we beat Dallas, I'm not saying we will, I'm not saying, we won't, whatever. Prediction will come later in the show. It will come up later as like, oh yeah, the Giants beat a team over 500, because there's no way Dallas is going under 500. Like, we can speculate about a couple of different things, but I don't know. So as for the locker room, I think this is a big win. If the Giants get that win, it's a big win. Because you're building on a desperate win, which you got. You don't really want to feel like that roller coaster of emotions in the same week, right? Oh yeah, you win on Sunday and then you lose, and then you feel that depression and that state of anger pretty much throughout the rest of the week. So that's where I stand. This is obviously a big divisional game. I know everybody says, oh, you could throw the records out. The Giants haven't beaten Dallas with Dak since 2016. That's a long time. I remember I was just getting into football at that time. 2016. Wow, that's a pretty long time. pretty long time. And the Giants haven't sacked Dak Prescott since 2021, which is a bit of a worry. A bit of a worry because they've had a pass rush at some points during, the time in between, which means Wink's defense never got a sack on him. And the last guy to sack Dak Prescott was Lorenzo Carter, which is an interesting factoid for y'all. He now plays for the Atlanta Falcons, and we'll be seeing him later this year. Let me pull a poll. Let me put a poll in the chat. Who wins? It's definitely not going to be a tie. I can tell you that much. It's either going to be outright the Giants by a little or the Cowboys by a lot. Because I don't see the Giants committing some sort of a blowout this game. That's not the team they've been respectfully under Brian Dable. But this is going to be an extremely tough game before we get into the injury report. Because I know I've been rambling about the first thoughts. This is going to be an extremely tough game for this Giants football team. It would be nice if they came out with a win. I know a lot of people aren't expecting to come out with a win after Thursday, but you don't want the season to be over as soon as before Halloween because you come up with what looks to be a tough schedule. Now, I know the Bengals don't look great. I know Seattle's 3-0 as of this moment. The Eagles, they're 2-1, but you get to those games when you get to those games. We're worrying about Dallas right now. If we can't win this game, then I don't know. My thoughts on the season kind of go back to its original thoughts, which is, 6-7 wins, be competitive, and get your quarterback next year. And I don't want to really look down the barrel of those thoughts. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't really want to look down the barrel of those thoughts. But anyway, let's get to the injury report. So the Dallas Cowboys, not really, a stacked injury report. There's two guys that are out, really doubtful actually, to play against the Giants tomorrow night at MetLife Stadium. That is safety Marquise Bell, who had a good year last year, came onto the scene with Dallas as a linebacker safety hybrid. And then you move to their other corner, Kalen Carson, who I don't know if he's a nickel. I don't know if he is a outside corner. We'll find out from David later on. But he is also out with a shoulder injury. Yes, he is out with a shoulder injury. So we won't see him. Trayvon Diggs is healthy. CJ Goodwin is healthy. A couple other guys are healthy. So we'll be facing their full secondary other than Kalen Carson. So I just wanted to put that out there. But as we go into the Giants injury report, want to remind y'all, like, comment, subscribe, share out, do all the good stuff. So the Giants injury report is a little bit more concerning. Darius Slayton is questionable with a thumb injury. I think he'll play. I think he'll stick through it. I mean, he's questionable. He was limited. And they didn't really run practice this week. It was all walkthroughs and strategy. So it's not like, they practiced hard this week. It was with pads. No, it was a walkthrough practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, I mean, it's not like, again, someone re-aggravated an injury. Slade had a thumb injury against Cleveland. Our corners, Adoree Jackson and Andrew Phillips, those guys had injuries retroactive to the Browns game. Both of them calf injuries, and it doesn't look like they're going to play. Both of them are out, which do cause concern. Realistically, they cause concern for the Giants because you're facing Dak, who's shat on the Giants secondary. Last couple times, whether it's they're playing a blitz, a game plan, or they're playing a different game plan of a bend but don't break, which was the last time out when they were in Dallas. The Giants were getting toasted. So you'll have Deonte Banks, who's coming off of a very, very tough week playing-wise. He had a defensive pass interference. He had multiple touchdown catches on him from Amari Cooper, former Dallas Cowboy. And you have Flott, who hasn't been good. Let's not paint the picture that he has been good. Isaiah Simmons in the slot or Nick McLeod in the slot. And they have a couple of ways they could go about this, but I would like to think it's going to be Flott, McLeod, and Banks as the starting three corners, which isn't a lot of experience on the field. I'm worried. Tim Frith says Giants beat Cowboys 31-16. Well, you having the confidence that the Giants are scoring 31 points. Uh Credit to you, brother. I don't have that same positivity because yeah, I don't think Dallas's pass defense is that bad. I know their run defense is pretty shit, but you usually don't score 30 plus points just solely running the football. Especially if you're Brian Dable, you're probably not gonna want to do that. But anyway, let's move on. So we got the rankings here for both sides. Now the Cowboys, they're ninth in total offense. They are first in passing offense, 32nd in rushing offense. Defensively, excuse me, I didn't even go offensively, but points per game, they are sixth, right? Defensively, the Cowboys are 28th, 14th against the pass. I think they're 32nd against the run. Just going to check my stats here a little bit. Believe they are 32nd against the run, which not a good look. Not a good look at all. ESPN has terrible ads. Let's see. Rushing defense in the NFL. The Cowboys are 32nd in the league. So not a good spot to be if you're Dallas. Don't know what the problem is there. And as far as a passing defense, they're just under the Giants. So they're around 13, 14. So that's where they're at. Mitch says, thank you for Saquon Barkley. Mitch has been thanking me for Saquon Barkley for a plenty long time, but I appreciate him coming in. Saquon Barkley has been destroying it with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know how many touchdowns he's got on this season thus far, but well, credit to them. Ryan Lynch says, we've lost 8 straight Thursday night games, and DJ's 1-12 in primetime. Not really looking good in that aspect, but that's why we play the games. That's true. That is true. We suck in prime time. Singletary season. Yeah. Singletary is a bit shaky. Listen, he's ran efficiently for the most part. Last week he didn't run the football well. I don't know what the cause of that was. I don't think many people did studies into it. However, I don't like his fumbling. I think it comes at the worst times. Jones in prime time is no bueno. Oh yeah, listen, I completely agree with you. I think the one primetime game he's won was against Washington in 22. Other than that, he's not good on primetime. So 1-12. I think that was the record someone proposed. You're welcome. He'll be hurt soon. I don't know if he's talking about Singletary or Jones or Barkley. Yeah, I know he's talking about Barkley. Okay, never mind. Behind that O-line, I don't know. Bill says, well, we knew 26 was going to be good in Philly. Yeah. No, yeah. He's going to be good in Philly. There's no doubt about that. Now, how far they'll get, I don't know, but we shall see. So they're 30th in points per game. We'll go over the analytics on the offensive side of the ball. We'll combine it with the Giants as well when we get to it, but I want to skip to the defense. They are 9th in blitz percentage. They are 1st in pressure percentage, so they get to the quarterback well, but they are 19th in sacks. So sometimes sacks can be a bit of an overrated stat if you don't look at it closely, if you don't look at the game film, if you don't look at this, if you don't look at that, whatever. If you don't look at things around the sacks, then you're not going to really understand. I think you can't just say, oh, well, they're like 19th, 20th in sacks. They can't get to the quarterback. Well, you have Micah Parsons back there. You have DeMarcus Lawrence, and the Giants have a test with their new O-line, right? I know that they didn't do great last week, but it's much improved than what we will see. It will be this week is going to be much improved, really tomorrow, compared to last year. We saw with Mark Lewinsky, Evan Neal, Ben Bredesen, all those different guys. What's up to Miz in the chat? What's going on, Miz? As always, the great rants and the great videos. And also subscribe to Mitch as well. He is part of the Hardcore Sports Network. So for the Giants now, for their stats, right, and their rankings, Giants offense 21st, passing offense 21st, rushing offense 19th, points per game 29th, defensively 15th, 13th against the pass, 23rd against the run, which is a little bit better. But you look at last week, Deshaun Watson had 37 pass attempts, 18 rush attempts by the Browns offense. So they didn't really run it too much, but it does make you look better on paper. Hopefully, but also the Giants defense, I don't trust them a ton against this vaunted Dallas passing offense. The rushing offense isn't very good. We'll get to ask David a little bit more about that when the time comes. So, points per game, 19th, 23rd in rushing defense, fifth in blitz percentage, which is a little bit of a shock, but not really when you look at the way the Giants have played the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's going to be the same thing this week. I think you'll see a little bit more. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say that because we got to go to things to look for, and we got to go over the offensive analytics. So, 10th in pressure percentage and second in the NFL in sacks, only behind Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings. So, passing play percentage, where do the teams rank? The Giants rank 12th in passing play percentage, and Dallas is second. So, that gives. I apologize for the stuff. Just give me 1 second, guys. I apologize. This is background noise. Keep flowing in the comments if you can. Again, my apologies for that. And it's still going. All right, let's hope that stops. Let's hope that stops. Okay, anyway, back to the things. I put my context in chat, but Miz says Dallas will steal it late 27-24. The Giants will play a big time game. Just got this gut feeling, hope that I'm wrong. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'll present my prediction a little bit later in the show. Um, but back to where we were, that was the passing play percentage. So that will give a little bit more context as why Dallas isn't a great rushing offense statistically. Now, the Giants, in terms of the rushing play percentage, not on first down, but the Giants rank 21st and Dallas is 31st. Now, if you were go to the first down passing percentage, the New York football Giants rank 29th. So they run it a lot on first down, which isn't a surprise given this regime. And the Dallas Cowboys, where do they rank on the first down passing percentage? They rank 19th. And then the rushing first down percentage, where do they rank? Let's see. The Giants rank 23rd and Dallas ranks 30th. It's pretty interesting that the Giants are that low considering how much they run the football on first down, but maybe it's down to analytics and opportunities. All right. So what are some things to look for coming into this game, right? What are some things to look for? I think personally, the Giants are going to look to keep this game very low score, like a grit and grind game, pretty much like the last two games, let's put it that way, right? Giants won 21-15 last game, then they lost 21-18 the prior game. Those were low scoring games. I think that's how the Giants are going to probably win most of their games, if not all their games this season. I don't think it's going to be some high scoring brouhaha. In terms of the offense, I'm not talking about the game itself. I'm talking about, what the offense looks like here, then around the square. Um, but I don't know if Dallas is going to commit to that. I don't think Dallas is going to commit to that. And I think they'll resist the Giants' temptations for that. I think the Giants will look to run the football to keep it a low scoring game. Um, because the Giants, in ways, have done that really well. They did it well against Washington, not so much against the Browns, not so much against the Vikings. Um, but that's their way of trying to eat the clock and set the tone down and just be efficient in the red zone and kick some field goals to where Dallas last year, right when the Giants tried doing that because they didn't have a good quarterback, they had Tommy DeVito. When that happens, excuse me. Apologies again. Moving forward. Um, where was I? So that when Tommy DeVito was in last year, they tried doing this bend but don't break crap. Didn't really work, and the Giants were blown out something like 47-13. So there's that. Um, moving to the defensive perspective of the Cowboys and the offensive perspective of the Giants, even a little bit too. We're staying on that note. I think they'll be blitz heavy on Daniel Jones. Now, they rank ninth in blitz percentage. They're not like all-time high in sacks, but as long as they could get pressure on Daniel Jones. Now, I don't know if it's going to be from the middle or the right side or the left side. I would like to think Andrew Thomas has somewhat adjusted this week because I feel like Myles Garrett got in his headspace last week, right? So is Runyon going to be the guy that gives up the pressures? Is it Schmitz, who didn't really have a great outing last time? Is it going to be Van Roten? Is it going to be Illuminor? Like, which one is it going to be? Because I feel like Dallas somehow, some way is going to get in there. Let's see. Well, their kicker is good from 60, so that's possible. Yeah. Needless to say, I have Brandon Aubrey on my fantasy team, on my ESPN fantasy team. I think I'm like 0-3 in that league. I really need a win, but listen, I'll take a Giants win over Brandon Aubrey and a fantasy win. I'm 0-3 in that league anyway. What is Dak doing against the Blitz? I feel like we should dare them to run and play coverage. Yeah, they're not a really. Again, apologies. Are we getting another kicker? Tommy Cutlets isn't good. Come on, Alex. Well, Greg Joseph isn't great, so that's that. I'm sorry. As I said, shit ton of interruptions today. I don't know why. Ryan Lynch, what is Dak doing against the Blitz? I feel like we should dare them to run and play coverage. He does really well against the Blitz. I think that's what Baltimore was doing most of last week, and they, I think, stopped it. I didn't watch the whole game, but he does well against the blitz. And the Giants haven't been able to get him anyway, so you might as well just play coverage and rush 4, which is honestly what I think the Giants are going to do this game. And that's also in things to look for. I don't think the Giants are going to blitz on Dak Prescott. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think there's a need to do that because Dak Prescott succeeds against the blitz anyway. So, you might as well just play the Shane Bowen defense way. I don't think Shane Bowen's going to get caught up in the blitz. So I would love for them to run the football more than pass because it gives our secondary a little bit of help. But we'll see. As I said, I don't see the Cowboys really saying, okay, we're gonna stick to what the Giants are gonna set the tone to, and that's running the football, chewing clock. And I'm like, I don't think Dallas is gonna do that. That they haven't done that, they're not going to, in my opinion. But if the Giants force them in a situation where for some reason they're getting to the quarterback or the secondary is really good, which we'll see, I think that boom, I think the Giants are not going to be able to be on the same tone length as Dallas. Let's see. Did you just say Tommy DeVito is not a good QB in front of me? Me of all people, Bill. We have to run the football and control the clock. Also, I feel like Gray should be sent down to the practice squad, sign Turbo. Let's not put him at kick returner again, because let's be real, folks. Last time against the Cowboys, when we had ridiculous plays, for lack of a better word, gut-wrenching plays, disastrous plays, we didn't win that football game, and it wasn't particularly close. Last week, we were lucky. I will say that. Like, the Giants fought back, but we were lucky. Because usually good football teams, after 2 disaster plays to start the game, it's over. It's done. So, my problem, Ryan, is that I think that the Giants do not have a power back. I kind of said it in the offseason. I maybe have teased it. The Giants think Eric Gray is his power back. He's not. And they're paying the piper a little bit. They could use a Braylon Allen, but for some reason, they didn't draft him. And they have Theo Johnson, but we'll see if they get the tight ends involved. They've barely been involved. There's mostly been to neighbors. Offensively. So players to watch, Dak Prescott, right? He is completing about 60.7% of his passes. He only got 4 touchdowns on the season thus far, 2 interceptions, 9 sacks taken. That's about 3 per game. CeeDee Lamb, he is their top receiver at 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 catches over 20 yards. He does have a fumble lost. Jalen Tolbert also mixing in there. 136 yards, one touchdown, a play over 20 yards, 10 catches. Jake Ferguson, I believe he's done for this. Maybe he's done for the season. I don't know, but I feel like I heard some news about Jake Ferguson and not particularly good news in terms of that. And then Brandon Cook, 75 receiving yards on 8 catches, one touchdown, one play over 20 yards. Now, their offensive line, right? Their offensive line is a little bit different the last few years. It's kind of been changing a little bit. Tyron Smith, he was let go in the offseason. He went to the New York Jets. Tyler Guyton is the left tackle, and he's a guy that the New York Giants are going to have to really key in on. 4 penalties, 3 sacks allowed this far. You move to left guard, Tyler Smith, the former first-round pick, 2 penalties, 0 sacks. Cooper Beebe, the Kansas State kid, 1 penalty, 2 sacks given up this far. Zach Martin, 1 sack allowed, and then Terrence Steele, 2 sacks allowed. So Guyton is the weakness. I would suspect that they're going to go out there and have some help for Tyler Guyton against either Tibbs or Brian Burns. But if they don't, that's where the Giants edge rushers need to get home. Now, you move over to the defensive line for the Cowboys. You got DeMarcus Lawrence, who is the better sack recorder, if you will. 12 tackles on the season, 3 TFLs, 2 sacks, 9 QB pressures, 4 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. And Micah Parsons, 12 tackles, a TFL, a sack, 12 QB pressures, 6 QB hits, and a pass deflection. So either way, you could say, oh, DeMarcus Lawrence is washed, this, that, and that, whatever, right? These guys always come to play against the New York Giants. DeMarcus Lawrence especially. He hates the New York Giants. He's hated the New York Giants since he was drafted in Dallas. That shit is definitely not going to change. Let me see what we got in the chat. Deck should eat BB alive. Listen, again, the Giants have not sacked Dak since 21. I think they had 2 sacks that day. It was Quincy Roche and Azeez Ojulari and Lorenzo Carter being the other guy. And that was a forced fumble. So that is your front 2 of the Dallas defense. You also got a couple other guys that mix in there, like Masi Smith and I'm forgetting Osi Odigizua. I believe his brother is the former Giant draft pick. Wasn't very good for the Giants, but that is beyond and besides the point. And we, of course, got to move to the secondary that we face, because I always like to key in on the secondary, whether they're good, bad, and different. Eric Kendricks also leads them, or is really tied in sacks. He was with Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. 29 tackles so far, 2 sacks, an interception, a pass deflection, and TFL. So he's playing some really good football right now. So you move to the secondaries I talked about. No Kalen Carson. No Kalen Carson. We'll move to Trayvon Diggs, and we know he's really given the Giants trouble over the last couple of years. Interceptions against Mike Glennon, interceptions against Daniel Jones. He's given the Giants the business. So this year, he's given up a completion percentage of 53.3, 98 yards total, 46 passer rating, and an INT, right? So you move forward with their next corner. At least I'm looking at like 2 different depth charts. Jordan Lewis, who's been around for a couple of years with Dallas, he's going to be one of their corners as well. 57.1 completion percentage allowed, 26 yards, 65.2 passer rating. And there's 2 guys that, at least I was looking at the depth chart again. I was looking at the depth chart, and one of these 2 dudes is going to be the starter. It's either going to be Israel Mukwamu. I'm probably butchering that, or it's going to be Andrew Booth Jr., who was just traded this offseason to the Cowboys for somebody else. I don't remember at the top of my head, but he last year with the Minnesota Vikings, he allowed 84 yards, 95.4 passer rating. Passers were 7 of 10 against him, which isn't bad, but also it's a limited time, so it is what it is. So it's either going to be Andrew Booth Jr. or it's going to be Israel Okamu. As I said, it's a tough name to pronounce, so I'm not going to go full throttle. Let's see what else. So we got here to do. Yeah, we went over all those guys. Now the keys to win. Give my prediction in a couple of seconds, But the keys to win, right? What are the keys to win in this game? Number one, I think you got to defend the pass. I talked about this earlier. I talked about how Dallas is not going to respond to the Giants trying to set the tone. The Giants last year in the game one where we got asses beat, they tried to set the tone, running the football with Barkley, pushing and shoving this, that, and the third. It didn't work. It did not work. And the Giants found out themselves and then tried to play catch up, and it was all a downhill tragedy. So, number one, you got to defend the pass. And it's going to be tough, right? You got to get to Dak on one end and you got to defend on the other. Brandon Cooks is still out there, Jalen Tolbert, and CeeDee Lamb, of course. So, you got Banks, McLeod, and Cordell Flott. It's going to be a tough task for the Giants because their wide receiver talent outdoes our talent on the cornerback end. Number two is run the football. Dallas's run defense hasn't been good. And if you're trying to set the tone and if it's working, you do that with Devin Singletary. You mix in some Tyrone Tracy. I'm going to be a little suspect as of right now about the middle of that Dallas defense, but we'll definitely get to that. So number two, run the football. And number three, play 4 quarters and sack Dak. I think that's going to be one of the biggest ones. And I know that's like a weird key number 3, but play 4 quarters and sack Dak because you can't play a half like you did against the Browns in the first half and totally just miss the second half because Dallas will catch up and probably kick your ass. But with that said, we are going to welcome in David Howman, who was with us last year talking about the Giants and the Cowboys. I think it was the opening game, actually, that we had you on, David. But started off, what are some takeaways that you have from the first 3 games of the Dallas Cowboys 2024 season?
Well, not many positive takeaways for the Cowboys from these first 3 games. I can tell you, Cowboys Nation is usually they have to wait until January to feel this down about the team. But they're 1-2, and their losses have come against what I think are probably 2 really good teams. The Saints appear to be legit. The Ravens, I know they started 0-2, but they're still the Ravens. They still have Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry makes them a better, a stronger running team as well. So I think a lot of this really, these first 3 games, I think it's just been kind of, we've been seeing the effects of players still kind of getting up to speed, having not played in the preseason, as well as playing against some pretty tough teams, because even Cleveland, as the Giants just found out, they're a tough team aside from their quarterback. Myles Garrett is still pretty darn good. Denzel Ward is a tough corner to throw against. So I think this team is still very much trying to figure out what they're going to be this year. And now they're coming into this Thursday night matchup against a team that historically, under Dak Prescott, under that era, they've done well against. My guess would be the Cowboys are feeling excited about that, especially after, they kind of came alive and looked like what fans thought they would be in that fourth quarter against the Ravens. And if they can bottle up that performance and carry it over into Thursday night, it could be a really good night for Cowboys fans. But again, this is the Dallas Cowboys. You never know what you're going to get with this kind of team, and you never know when they're going to completely surprise you in good ways, bad ways, everything in between.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think I think because I know a couple of Cowboy fans, I think they could slow their emotions a little bit because I feel like Dallas is going to be a good team. You did face some really good teams within the first few games, so we'll see. I think the Giants game is definitely a possible get right game, but referencing to the chat, I wonder if Diggs is going to move around with Neighbors, if he's in the slot. I think that's something that Mike Zimmer is going to key in on. Now, I don't know if they did it with past wide receivers for the first 3 games, but I thought it was very stupid of Jim Schwartz not to trail Neighbors with his number 1 corner in Denzel Ward. They made that adjustment in the second half a little far too late. Thank you for the Super Chat member for 13 months, the transparent ones. Hit the like button and sub up, everyone. And also shouts to El Capitan and Refucho in the chat. But I want to get into some questions that I've had about the Dallas Cowboys and some things I may not know. I was looking at the base statistics about rushing offense where they rank, passing offense where they rank. They're 30, or at least the bottom half of the league in running the football. Now, as we checked on this live show, they haven't really run the football that much
Mhm.
statistically in terms of rushing play percentage. Is that more of the reason why they haven't been able to run the football, or there's not a motive, or they just haven't had success?
Well, it's certainly a factor in why they've been uneven running the football so far. I mean, they've played 3 games, and all 3 of those games have been very odd game situations for the majority of the time. They got up really big on Cleveland, and for almost 3 full quarters, they were pretty much just running the ball, trying to kill the clock. And of course, Cleveland has a great defensive line. They load at the box. You're not going to run very well against that in that situation. New Orleans, Baltimore, they were down early in both of those games, the exact opposite scenario. So they weren't running the ball very much. They were dropping back and passing, and most of their runs were coming on, third and short, where you need 2 yards, and you get 2 yards, and it's a good run, but it doesn't look good in the season-long stat sheet. So, but also what we've seen with this running game is that when they are running it, it's not been very efficient. They have one of the highest, I believe they're number one right now in percent of their runs that are getting stuffed. And a lot of their runs are coming up the middle. Of course, I expect them to change that this week with a guy like Dexter Lawrence going up the middle. At least I would hope they won't be running up the middle as much as they have been. But uh, all in all, this offensive line, I mean, they've got 2 rookie starters. But even beyond that, Zach Martin has not played the way Zach Martin does. Tyler Smith, who was an all pro last year at left guard, has not been as great as he has been in run blocking. It really just feels like this offensive line is still figuring out how to gel, especially with a running back by committee approach this year, which has not been the case in Dallas for the last few years. So I think between the lack of carries in normal game situations and just everybody not really being on the same page yet, that's why we haven't seen a whole lot out of this running back group. But because this was an offseason narrative, everyone wanted the Cowboys to go out and get Derrick Henry. They wanted to get a handful of guys. Aaron Jones was a big name, and then they didn't draft anyone, and then they brought Zeke back after the draft was over. So then when you go out and you put up these rushing statistics, fans were already annoyed about it, and now they're not playing well. Everyone's ready to see Dalvin Cook called up from the practice squad, as if that's going to be the thing that really, gets everyone going here. But I really think that they're just, again, they need to just have a normal game and have some better, some improvements in the run blocking. And there's potentially a chance in this one, as long as they're not running it big old decks. But I think they just got to, keep at it, and they'll get on the right path.
Yeah. Now, as far as running back specifics, first of all, I would agree with you that Dalvin Cook is definitely not some sort of huge step up, him being on the practice squad. Do you think Ezekiel Elliott, and again, I haven't watched much Cowboy football this season, do you think he's like lost a step? Does this team not have like a legitimately stable running back room? Obviously, you mentioned the committee. So, like,
Mhm.
do you think there's anything wrong with the running backs themselves? I don't think Rico Dodal's a number one either, but I'll leave it to you to give your thoughts.
Well, and that's kind of been the consternation among fans in the offseason, was saying, last time Zeke was in Dallas, he very clearly was not number one running back caliber. And people were saying, well, Rico Dowdle's not either. So who's it going to be? I will say, in the limited carries that the Cowboys have had so far this season, Rico Dowdle has shown a lot of explosiveness. He's shown a lot of suddenness in his playing style. Granted, I think only one game he's even gotten to 10 carries, and that was, he tapped out at 10 carries. So how that holds up over a season remains to be seen. As for Zeke, they've pretty much exclusively been using him as a short yardage back, and leaving him in for pass protection on passing downs. In both these last 2 games, he has not even taken the field until the second quarter. Majority of the carries early on in these games, while they're still in their scripted plays, have gone to Rico Dowdle and also to Kansas State superstar Deuce Vaughn. I believe he's still the shortest player in the NFL. And of course, he was a rookie last year and had a couple of games, but ended up spending most of the season as a healthy scratch, just kind of still getting up to speed in the NFL. But he's shown a little bit better burst, although, again, a lot of his runs have gotten stuffed within a couple of yards after he gets the ball. But it definitely seems like the Cowboys want to get Dowdle and Deuce the ball first and foremost, and then on those short yardage plays, they know who they're going to, and it's Zeke.
Yeah. Moving to the offensive line, you said they are having a little bit difficulty thus far gelling. In your opinion, we'll start here. How big was the loss of Tyron Smith? Tyler Biotish, not so much, because it's not like he was this all-pro center. But Tyron Smith being there since 2011, I know he had his injury problems, but he was locked down left tackle like he's playing for the Jets right now. How big do you think the loss is?
Well, the injury part you can't ignore because, year in, year out, it's not a question of if he's playing the full season, it's when we have to have somebody else step up. But yeah, to your point, when he does play, like he never once looked like he lost a step. So it's kind of like, a little bit of a catch-22. Would you rather have, Hall of Fame caliber left tackle for half the season and then roll the dice with your backup starting the other half? Or would you rather just get a young, traitsy guy like Tyler Guyton, who, he's had rookie struggles, but for the most part, he's looked like another really solid draft pick for this Cowboys front office on the offensive line, and just kind of coach him up and take that plunge and develop him. So, I mean, I can tell you when Guyton has had his rookie moments so far, yeah, you definitely are like, man, I wish Tyron Smith was out there, but there's been a lot of positive development so far for Guyton, just from where he was at the start of training camp to where he is now. And as far as the center position goes as well, obviously Tyler Biotish wasn't as much of a loss. But for Cooper Beebe, I mean, he didn't play center in college. He's still learning the position a little bit. And sometimes you can see that, especially in pass protection. But he's also kind of shown some of those improvements and developments just even from these first 3 weeks. In terms of communication with the offensive line, people are starting to get a little bit better in terms of how they work together as a unit when there's stunts and twists and blitzes and things like that. But either way, I mean, these are still rookies and you're going to have those growing pains. So of course you'd want a guy like Tyron Smith, but I think at the point that they decided to move on in this past offseason, it just felt like it was what was going to be in everybody's best interest for a fresh start.
Yeah. Moving to the defense a little bit, how is the philosophy for Mike Zimmer different than what Dan Quinn did with this defense?
It's been very interesting to hear players talk about the difference this offseason. Dan Quinn was very beloved in this locker room, had a lot of success on the defensive side, but also, the defense, they made big plays, but then they also occasionally they gave up big plays, or they were pretty consistently one of the more penalized defenses in the NFL. Mike Zimmer has a reputation for being tough, to put it lightly. He's definitely a tough love guy. Very, very different style from Dan Quinn, just from a person-to-person standpoint. Players have said over and over all offseason, all preseason, saying like, he teaches you accountability. He teaches us like where we're supposed to line up. And sometimes some of the things that they say, I know that it's not the intent of what these players are saying, but it almost sounds like a backhanded like slap at Dan Quinn of like, oh, he's teaching us things about how to be disciplined that we've never been taught before. And then you go back and say, well, what was Dan Quinn doing? how did he miss that part? Obviously the results have not yet followed because there's been, they played really well against Deshaun Watson. I don't think that is anything to hang your hat on at this point, but, and then really, really poorly against the Saints and the Ravens. But really, this is a scheme that Mike Zimmer's scheme has been around for quite a while. It's heavy on two deep safeties, heavy on he loves man coverage and he loves his quarters zone coverage that can sometimes turn into man coverage. It's a very complex scheme, especially in the secondary. And so, like, historically speaking, with Zimmer, when he comes in to a new team, usually the defense is not very good that first year. And then they kind of start hitting their stride towards the end of that first year. Granted, most of the time he's gone to places, it's been because the defense was terrible and he got brought in to fix it up. Here he's taking over a defense that was already great. It's hard to understand how much of the problems right now is just the players don't fit with what he's doing, how much of it is they're still kind of learning this scheme, and how much of it is just maybe Zimmer's lost a step, and he hasn't called a defense since 2021, and there's been a lot of changes in the NFL and especially for offenses since then. 3 games in, it's hard to really know what the answers are to all of that. But one thing for sure is everybody was getting an earful after that Saints game. Everybody was getting an earful after the Ravens game because Mike Zimmer is not the kind of guy who's going to tolerate the way that they've been playing up till now.
Yeah, definitely. So what's up to Man Cave in the chat? Mark Dunyon says Cowboys will beat the Giants. End of story. I'm leaning to that side very much so, but I'll give my prediction at the end. What has been the main issue with the Cowboys' run defense? Because obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons are there. There's been questions as far as Micah Parsons' run defense. Is it the middle of the defensive line? Is it gap discipline? What are the issues with the run defense?
So as these things usually go, it's a lot of things. There's not, and especially with the Cowboys, I mean, this run defense so far has been like just comically bad. The Saints, I mean, both the Saints and the Ravens, neither of them hit 20 dropbacks in the entire game, which is just ridiculous. And the Saints put up 40 plus. The Ravens could have if they kept running their offense in the second half. And really, a lot of these offenses, I mean, they've been a lot of it's been running outside, and a lot of it is pre-snap disguise. It's isolating guys. There were several times in this Ravens game where they would motion whoever it was that Trayvon Diggs was covering, because with Mike Zimmer in charge of this defense, he doesn't exclusively have his corners shadow receivers, but he does it fairly often. They would motion the receiver that Diggs was lined up against over to one side and then run it to that side. And essentially they would just, the Ravens receiver would just run away from Diggs so that Derrick Henry got a one-on-one against Diggs. And I don't care how good a tackler Trayvon Diggs is, he's not winning that matchup. So they tried to isolate him. They tried to isolate a couple of times. They really took advantage of Micah Parsons because he's very much a downhill, like get in the backfield, try to get the quarterback type. And so when you have some of these pin and pull run plays or these trap plays, like they can really take advantage of him. He's going after the quarterback. He's not necessarily paying attention to the running back. And if you just let him in through that gap, he thinks, oh, I've got a sack. No, the running back just got 8 yards. So there's just really, this defense is not, against the run at least, they're not playing as one. In this past game against Baltimore, I mentioned how Zimmer likes to have 2 deep safeties. He switched that up against Baltimore and was loading the box almost every play. They were running with a single high safety majority of the time. And really what that allowed the Ravens to do was just, they would have their offensive linemen fire off their gaps. They would let 1 or 2 of the slowest defensive linemen just kind of get through, but their running backs able to get past him. You get a lineman on a safety or a linebacker, it's over. You let Derrick Henry build up some downhill steam. It was just not a good way to attack this type of offense. And against the Saints, it was very much the same, but they were just running outside and they were getting Alvin Kamara in situations where his speed can take over. So there's been times where the interior of the defensive line has just plain getting beaten. They've been pushed. They've been slow off the line. But then there's also times where they get outside. They get linemen on corners, and that's not a winning proposition for the defense. So it's it's definitely been an issue, especially because a big narrative this past offseason was the Cowboys wanted to get bigger in the trenches. Mozzie Smith, their first round pick from a couple years ago, he had trimmed down to under 300 pounds to play three technique in Dan Quinn's defense. They have him bulking back up to get closer to that 330-pound range he was in college. They brought in Linval Joseph. They brought in Jordan Phillips. It hasn't made a difference yet. And that's added to the frustration for Cowboys fans who saw these acquisitions and thought, oh, we're finally going to be good against the run. And it hasn't seemed to make any sort of change because there's still holes for opposing offenses to exploit.
Yeah, definitely. So what's up to Jets mess in the chat? Mark says, would it be fair to say Singletary gets 100 yards and 2 tutties? I'm gonna say at best probably like 90. I don't really think that Singletary is gonna run for 100. I personally don't have, this is me, the confidence that the Giants will be able to sell the fact that, because obviously it's not just blocking up front, it's not just the running back hitting the holes, it's also selling the fact that you will either run or pass. And if the Giants don't have some sort of like a decent passing game to where they could sort of sell the play action and all that other good stuff, I don't think they would run the football as well. And I think that could be where the Cowboys get right in the trenches and in the running game. But for my sake, let's hope that, they Singletary gets close to 100 and the Giants win. But talking about a player I begun the question with in a totally different aspect, what is your confidence in the Cowboys getting a contract done with Micah Parsons?
Confidence that it gets done, very high. Confidence that it gets done in a timely manner, non-existent. Of course, the Cowboys knew for quite a while that they would have to get contracts done with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott this past offseason. Took until, I think, right before preseason started to get the CeeDee Lamb deal done. Of course, it meant he missed a lot of reps in training camp, and through these first 3 games, he's looked good, but he hasn't looked the way he has the last couple of years, and people are pointing to, well, he's not been in proper football shape. He's not been catching passes from Dak every single day. That's what happens when you let your players sit out because you don't take care of your deals. Dak got done literally the morning before their week 1 game, a few hours before kickoff. And of course, with that situation, with the way his contract was set up, if they hadn't been able to get that deal done, there were 3 different void years after to where he could have been playing for another team and they'd still be paying him $40 million plus. They had 0 leverage and they still let it run all the way to the end. With Micah, I mean, he has stated several times he wants to stay in Dallas. He loves playing for the Cowboys. But he also understands there's 0 reason why he shouldn't be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, if not the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. And his agent is going to fight for every single dollar and cent. And the Cowboys have been very clear that they fight to not pay their players and then ultimately end up paying them exactly what they want. So I'm confident that it will get done. It might take a franchise tag to really push things into the end zone there, but I also am confident that it's going to be absolutely miserable to cover for the next year or so.
It's definitely going to be a train ride at that. Now, Kalen Carson is doubtful with an injury. Who's going to take Carson's place in the secondary?
So there's a few different options that they have here. Jordan Lewis has been their slot corner so far this year. He's traditionally played in the slot. They also have Israel Mukwamu, who played outside corner at South Carolina back in college. When he was drafted to Dallas, they started to convert him to a safety. Since then, he's played some slot. He's played outside corner. I know there's talk about potentially putting Jordan Lewis outside and Mukwamu in the slot. They could also just keep Lewis there and have Mukwamu outside. They also have Andrew Booth Jr., early second-round pick from a few years ago. The Vikings traded him to Dallas in the preseason. He had some up and down performances in the preseason, but overall, he seems to fit this Mike Zimmer scheme. He's been inactive so far these first 3 games, but they could also have him active and opt for him instead. There's a few different options here, but But really, like I had mentioned before, with the way Zimmer likes to move his corners around, I mean, there will be times where Diggs ends up being your slot corner if Malik Neighbors is lined up in the slot. I do expect Diggs to follow for Diggs to follow Neighbors. I'd be surprised if he was following someone else, given how much better Neighbors is than everybody else in this receiver room. So it really, I think, just depends on what the matchups are going to be, and really who shows up in practice this week. But there is a lot of trust in Israel Mukwamu and being able to kind of move him around a few different places. So I would probably, my best guess would be he's the first guy up.
Going into further game prep, an X factor on the offense for the Cowboys, an X factor on the defense for the Cowboys.
I think X factor on offense, I would go with Jake Ferguson, their tight end. He missed week 2 against the Saints with an injury that he sustained at the end of the Browns game. Came back against the Ravens and had a very productive game. He's very, very good at getting open over the middle, very good after the catch. And Dak has this unwavering confidence in Ferguson when he's going down the seam. If he has even a slight opening to get the ball to Ferguson, he's taking it. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, but we love when a quarterback has faith in his pass catcher. I think this is a game where obviously the Giants, Shane Bowen's coming into this and saying, we got to take CeeDee Lamb out of this. And rightfully so. That is easier said than done. But even if you do, I think having Ferguson back and knowing that he played the way that he did this past week can give you confidence for Dallas to say, well, if they manage to take CD out or even limit him somewhat, we know we've got this guy as our number 2, as our safety blanket. And they can get him involved in a few different ways, and he can be pretty lethal after the catch either way. As far as the defensive side, man, it's hard to pick an X factor because right now nobody's really been stepping up at this point. But I think really what I'll go with is Donovan Wilson, their safety, who I talked about. They're probably going to have Diggs shadowing Malik Neighbors. I also would anticipate that they'll have some level of safety kind of shading a little bit more towards Neighbors' side, not necessarily double teaming him, but just really putting an emphasis on we got to take Malik Neighbors out of this game because he is the passing game right now. Really a testament to how great he's been so far in his rookie year. But Donovan Wilson is a player who back in college was kind of a safety corner hybrid. He has a lot of great coverage traits, but also is a really physical hitter, really physical downhill thumper in the run defense game. So being able to kind of pair him with, Trayvon Diggs is kind of the coverage guy, but if they get the ball over him, they get it to Malik Neighbors. If Donovan Wilson is there to kind of, lay the lumber and like make the rookie think a little bit next time he reaches out for that catch. And Zimmer also loves to use some safety rotations and blitz plays, and he's used Wilson as a blitzer a couple of times already. So I think that's an area where, you show Wilson shading over to Neighbor's side a few times, and then the moment that Daniel Jones starts expecting, okay, Donovan's going to be on that side, that's when you send him on a blitz, get a big play here or there. I think going into this season, we thought Donovan Wilson was going to be a real chess piece for Zimmer. Hasn't really happened so far, mostly because the run defense has gotten ripped to shreds. But I think this could be the game where we really see that start to come out.
Definitely. So if you're a coach or you're an opposing fan, whatever, and you're looking at the Giants and you're thinking, okay, this guy in offense can wreck our game. This guy on defense can wreck our game. Which 2 players, one offense, one defense, could it be?
Offensively, it's Neighbors, if I haven't made that clear. I loved him in college. He was just such a fun player to watch, and he's picked up exactly where he left off with the Giants so far. The confidence that Daniel Jones already has in him. He leads the NFL in targets already. He's been highly productive, and just looking at, I think there's only one other Giants player right now that has 10 catches or more. And it's a testament to Neighbors and how much trust they have in building the passing game around him. So if you're a coach looking at this and you say, well, if we take Neighbors out of the game, or even if we contain him a little bit, this will be a good game for us. Defensively, there's definitely a lot more pieces to be concerned about. The Brian Burns trade was and just a masterclass from Joe Shane in terms of what they gave up for the player they got. But I think I still come back to Dexter Lawrence. We know he's a beast in the run game. He's currently leading the team in sacks and pressures. Like he's multifaceted. He does everything. He's been so good for the Giants since he got there, and I think he may be in the process of having the best year of his career right now. Anyway, and especially in this game, going up against Cooper Beebe, rookie center, it'll be his fourth game in the NFL. I don't like that for the Cowboys having that matchup, because even if you had Tyler Biotish, if you had kept him, I'd still be worried about it because Dexter Lawrence is that good.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll do score prediction. I have Dallas winning, and I have a question after this before we close it up. But my score prediction, I am not going to get emotionally set into this game. So I'm going to say Dallas wins 30-13.
All right. I think I'll preface by saying I'm really bad with the score predictions. I tend to vary between super close and just total blowouts. Though to be fair, the Cowboys do have a history of doing that as well. I have the Cowboys winning this as well. I think they're kind of in a spot right now where they're just looking to get right. They're looking to bounce back, and they know this Giants team pretty well at this point. The coaching staff knows them. The players know them. Dak Prescott hasn't lost to this franchise since his rookie year. I have them winning 43-17. I think it's going to be one of those games similar to the season opener last year where they get up big. Micah Parsons gets to just go hunt Daniel Jones, and things kind of fall apart from there. So that's what I see happening.
All right. So the question before we close it out, and I give you a shot to plug your stuff, is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the final year of Mike McCarthy's contract as a Cowboys head coach. I could be wrong, but if that is the case, do you think if they exit like last year or some of the years prior, that he will not be here next year?
Oh, I mean, that is the $1 million question. And it's sometimes it was like what we talked about every single day of the offseason when it was first announced they weren't going to extend his contract. It is worth noting the Cowboys have done this twice before. Jason Garrett coached into the final year of his contract 2 different times. One of those years, they ended up, they won the division. They went to the playoffs. They won a playoff game, ended up losing as they do, and got extended. The next time was when he ended up leaving and Mike McCarthy came in to replace him. I think from what I can tell, Jerry Jones is sincere when he says he trusts and believes in Mike McCarthy. I think he really is a believer in what McCarthy has done in Dallas, a lot of the infrastructure things that he's put in place with this franchise. And I think that makes him hesitant to make a change hastily. I think if the Cowboys are in the playoffs, as long as they are either win the division or they can win a wild card game, and as long as they don't get completely embarrassed in the playoffs in some capacity, I would anticipate he probably comes back. If it's another game like when they lost to the Packers in the wild card, that'll be a lot tougher to come back from. And of course, if the Cowboys miss the playoffs outright, not even a question. We're looking at a new head coach.
Little teaser I'm going to throw in there. You wouldn't think, now this is just my personal opinion, based on these two personalities, you don't think that this would be an attraction, or maybe you do think this would be an attraction for Bill Belichick?
I think it would be an attraction for him based on the history of the franchise. I think the moment that he walked into the team facility and saw how much this building is built for tourists, because you can take tours and watch players training and working out. Knowing how he ran the Patriots, I think he'd take one look at that in the interview and say, I don't need this.
Definitely see it that way. And where can people find you and what you do?
Yeah, you can find me on X, Twitter at underscore DH44 underscore. You can find my work at bloggingtheboys.com. I actually have a weekly article there called the McCarthy Chronicles, where we talk about Mike McCarthy weekly. So as the season progresses, I'm sure that will get very entertaining one way or the other. And you can find me, I'm the host of the Writer's Block podcast, talking all things Cowboys, and we talk plenty about around the NFL as well. Talk about the Giants plenty since they're division rivals on Spotify, Apple. It's all on my Twitter as well if you want to listen along and get a peek behind enemy lines at what's going on in Cowboy land.
Of course. So shouts to Armand in the chat, but ladies, gents, whoever, go give David a follow. Check out his work. Usual great insight on the Dallas Cowboys. We play them tomorrow night at 8:15. That's the kickoff. At least I believe so. As for this show, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications, when the live stream pops, you drop, share out, go on the podcast platforms, download, tell your friends to download. We'll be live and reacting to the game, so I will be either, well, I would say most likely extremely disappointed or just not even feeling it because this is the New York Giants and Dallas has beaten our ass through and through the last few